The 1980s was a bold and vibrant decade, filled with unforgettable movies, changing fashion, and new stars who captured the spotlight. Many actresses from this era became international icons, admired not only for their talent, but also for their charisma and unique style. Let's look back at 30 of the most famous actresses of the 1980s, how they were then and how they are now. Michelle Pfeiffer became one of Hollywood's brightest stars in the 1980s with films like Scarface and The Witches of Eastwick. Her sharp beauty and magnetic presence made her a favorite. Today, in her mid-60s, she continues to act, her elegance and talent as strong as ever. Molly Ringwald was the ultimate teen queen of the 1980s, starring in classics like 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club. Now in her mid-50s, she has transitioned to character roles and writing, while still carrying the charm that made her an icon. Demi Moore rose to fame in the 1980s as part of the Brat Pack. Her striking looks and intense performances made her stand out. Today in her 60s, she remains in the spotlight, still admired for her ageless beauty. Meg Ryan captured hearts in the late 1980s, setting the stage for her romantic comedy reign of the 1990s. In her 60s now, she appears less frequently on screen, but her image as the girl next door of the 80s remains unforgettable. Jamie Lee Curtis became the scream queen of the 1980s with her horror roles, especially in Halloween. Today, in her mid-60s, she continues to thrive, winning awards and proving she's more than just a horror legend. Brooke Shields was a teenage sensation in the 1980s, famous for her bold beauty in The Blue Lagoon. Now in her late 50s, she continues acting and modeling, still turning heads with her timeless looks. Phoebe Cates captured youthful charm in films like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She later stepped away from Hollywood to focus on family life. Now in her 60s, she lives a quieter life, but remains remembered as an 80s favorite. Jennifer Beals became an overnight sensation with Flashdance, her athletic beauty and dance sequences inspiring a generation. Today, in her 60s, she continues to act, balancing television and film with grace. Geena Davis soared to fame in the 1980s with roles in Tootsie and Beetlejuice. Today, in her late 60s, she is both an actress and an advocate for women in media, proving her influence extends beyond the screen. Ali Sheedy was another beloved member of the 1980s Brat Pack, starring in films like The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire. Now in her 60s, she still acts occasionally, and her work remains a cornerstone of 1980s cinema. Winona Ryder began her career in the late 1980s with Beetlejuice and Heathers. She was the edgy starlet of her generation. Today in her 50s, she has found renewed fame with Stranger Things, showing she remains a powerful force. Mia Sara stole hearts in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. After a run of film roles in the 1980s, she eventually left Hollywood to live a private life. Now in her 50s, she remains a nostalgic figure of the decade. Andie MacDowell rose to fame in the late 1980s with her stunning looks and talent. Today, in her mid-60s, she continues acting, aging gracefully while embracing her natural beauty. Kathleen Turner became a sultry superstar of the 1980s with roles in Body Heat and Romancing the Stone. Today, in her 70s, she continues acting, her voice and presence still unforgettable. Sigourney Weaver carried her 1970s success into the 1980s, becoming an icon with Aliens and Ghostbusters. Now in her 70s, she continues to act in blockbuster films, showing her strength has never diminished. Meryl Streep dominated the 1980s as she refined her craft in powerful dramas. Today, in her 70s, she is universally recognized as one of the greatest actresses of all time, her career spanning over 4 decades. Kim Basinger became a sex symbol of the 1980s with films like 9½ Weeks. Now in her 70s, she lives a more private life, but is still remembered as one of Hollywood's most striking beauties. Helen Hunt began her career in the 1980s with television roles before her breakout success in the 1990s. Today, in her 60s, she remains active in both film and television. Linda Hamilton became legendary as Sarah Connor in The Terminator. In the 1980s, she was the face of action and strength. Today, in her late 60s, she has reprised her iconic role, proving she's still a warrior at heart. Madonna, though primarily a music icon, made her mark in acting during the 1980s with films like Desperately Seeking Susan. Today, in her mid-60s, she continues to reinvent herself, remaining one of the most talked-about stars in the world. Rebecca De Mornay became a breakout star in the 1980s with Risky Business. Today, in her 60s, she continues to act in both film and television, though more quietly than in her heyday. Sharon Stone began her rise to fame in the late 1980s, setting the stage for her stardom in the 90s. Now in her 60s, she continues acting and is admired for her resilience and timeless glamour. Jennifer Grey became a household name with Dirty Dancing, one of the most beloved films of the 1980s. Today, in her 60s, she continues acting and dancing, still remembered for her unforgettable role as Baby. Sybil Shepherd carried her 1970s fame into the 1980s, becoming a television star with Moonlighting. Now in her 70s, she still acts occasionally, her beauty now softened with age but her charisma intact. Daryl Hannah lit up the screen in Splash and Blade Runner. Her ethereal beauty made her a true 1980s star. Today, in her 60s, she remains active, especially in environmental causes. Mia Farrow, though starting earlier, was a familiar face in the 1980s cinema. Now in her late 70s, she is more focused on humanitarian work, but remains admired as an icon. Glenn Close became a powerhouse actress in the 1980s with Fatal Attraction. Today, in her 70s, she continues to deliver commanding performances, her talent as sharp as ever. Holly Hunter entered Hollywood in the late 1980s, quickly establishing herself as a force of nature. Today, in her mid-60s, she remains a respected and active actress. Sally Field carried her earlier fame into the 1980s, winning awards and admiration for her versatility. Now in her late 70s, she remains active, her warmth and relatability still shining through. Looking back at these women, the 1980s gave us actresses who were bold, fearless, and unforgettable. Some have stepped out of the spotlight, others continue to thrive, but all of them remain icons of a decade that reshaped Hollywood.